It is April 1961. This man has just seized control of South Korea in a military coup. His name is Park Chung-hee, and at this moment, he inherits a nation that most of the world has already written off as hopeless. South Korea in 1961 is not the gleaming technological powerhouse we know today. It is one of the poorest countries on earth. Per capita income sits at a devastating $72 a year. To put that in perspective, South Korea is poorer than Bolivia, poorer than Mozambique. Even North Korea has 3 times the income per person. The country survives on American aid handouts, while 2/3 of its population lives in crushing poverty. This is a nation with no steel mills, no modern factories, no technology sector. Most people work as farmers, using methods that have not changed for centuries. The infrastructure is crumbling. Corruption runs rampant through every level of government. Foreign observers look at South Korea and see a failed state propped up by foreign charity. But Park Chung-hee sees something else entirely. He sees potential. And over the next 18 years, this military dictator will orchestrate one of the most dramatic economic transformations in human history. He will create the foundation for companies like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG. He will build the industrial base that will turn South Korea into a global technology leader. Yet his methods will be ruthless. His rule will be iron-fisted, and his vision will demand sacrifices that will reshape Korean society forever. This is Park Chung-hee, the dictator who built modern South Korea. When Park takes power in 1961, he faces a choice that will define his legacy. He can continue the failed policies of his predecessor, accepting South Korea as a permanent aid recipient dependent on American handouts. Or he can attempt something that most economists consider impossible, transforming an agricultural society into an industrial powerhouse in a single generation. Park chooses the impossible. But first, he must understand exactly what he is fighting against. South Korea in the early 1960s represents everything Park despises about weakness and dependency. The previous government, under Syngman Rhee, survived entirely on foreign aid, while corruption consumed whatever resources existed. Businessmen grew rich through political connections rather than productive work. The economy produced nothing the world wanted to buy. Park, trained in the Japanese military during the 1930s, witnessed firsthand how systematic planning and disciplined execution could transform a nation. Japan had modernized from a feudal society into an industrial power within decades. If Japan could do it, why not Korea? But Park understands that transformation requires more than hope. It demands a complete restructuring of how the government relates to the economy. So he creates something that has never existed before in Korean history, a developmental state. This is not socialism. Private companies will own the means of production, but it is not pure capitalism either. The government will actively plan, direct, and coordinate economic development rather than leaving everything to market forces. In 1961, Park establishes the Economic Planning Board, giving it unprecedented power over the entire economy. This organization will set targets, allocate resources, and measure results with military precision. Every major economic decision will flow through this central command structure. Then comes the master plan. In 1962, Park launches the first 5-year economic development plan. But this is not some vague collection of hopes and wishes. This is a detailed blueprint with specific targets, measurable goals, and strict accountability mechanisms. The first plan focuses on building basic infrastructure and light industries, particularly textiles. The targets seem almost laughably ambitious to foreign observers. Park promises to increase exports from $87 million to over $800 million within 8 years. He pledges to grow the economy by 10% annually, when most developed countries struggle to achieve half that rate. The world watches with skepticism. How can a country with no industrial base, no skilled workers, and no capital suddenly become a manufacturing powerhouse? The answer lies in Park's understanding of something most economists miss: the power of concentrated effort. Park does not try to develop every industry simultaneously. Instead, he picks specific sectors and pours all available resources into making them succeed. Textiles become the first target because they require relatively simple technology and can employ large numbers of unskilled workers. But success in textiles is only the beginning. Park envisions a much more ambitious transformation. By the late 1960s, he begins planning what he calls the heavy chemical industry drive. This represents a fundamental shift from light manufacturing to technology-intensive industries that require massive capital investment and sophisticated expertise. On January 12, 1973, Park makes an announcement that will reshape the Korean economy forever. The government will now focus on developing 5 strategic industries: electronics, shipbuilding, machinery, petrochemicals, and non-ferrous metals. These are not random choices. These are the industries that Park believes will determine economic power in the modern world. The decision seems insane to most observers. How can a country that barely produces textiles suddenly jump to making semiconductors and building ships? Park's answer is characteristically blunt: through discipline, planning, and an absolute refusal to accept limitations. To execute this vision, Park creates a partnership with a small group of entrepreneurial families who will become known as the Chaebol. These business conglomerates receive government support in exchange for taking on massive risks to develop new industries. The relationship works like this. The government provides cheap financing through subsidized loans, protection from foreign competition with tariffs and import restrictions, and privileged access to the highest levels of political power. In return, the Chaebol must invest in the industries Park considers strategically important and meet ambitious export targets. Among these early partners are names that will become globally recognized: Lee Byung-chul of Samsung, Chung Ju-young of Hyundai, and Koo In-hoi of LG. When Park first comes to power, he actually arrests these businessmen as symbols of the corruption he despises. He quickly realizes that their entrepreneurial energy, combined with government direction, can drive the transformation he envisions. The partnership between Park's government and the Chaebol creates a unique development model. Private enterprise operates under state guidance, enabling rapid technological advancement that would be impossible through market forces alone. The government sets the strategic direction, while private companies execute the plans and bear the commercial risks. This system allows South Korea to make enormous investments in industries where success is far from guaranteed. When Park decides to build a modern steel industry, foreign experts declare the plan impossible. The World Bank refuses to provide financing, arguing that South Korea is too small to support steel production efficiently. Park ignores the skeptics. In 1968, he creates the Pohang Iron and Steel Company, known as POSCO. The project requires massive upfront investment with no guarantee of success. Construction begins in 1970 with Japanese technology and foreign loans that Park personally guarantees. The skeptics seem vindicated when construction begins. POSCO faces technical disasters, cost overruns, and international ridicule. Foreign engineers question whether Korean workers can master the complex technology required for modern steel production. But Park refuses to abandon the project. He appoints Park Tae-jun, a retired army general and personal friend, to run the company with military discipline. On July 3, 1973, POSCO produces its first steel. Within a decade, it becomes the world's most efficient steel producer. The company that foreign experts said would never succeed now supplies high-quality steel to Korean shipbuilders, automakers, and electronics manufacturers at below-market prices, giving them a crucial competitive advantage in global markets. The success of POSCO proves Park's central thesis. With proper planning and unwavering commitment, South Korea can compete with anyone in any industry. But steel is only the foundation. Park's real vision focuses on the industries he believes will dominate the future economy. Electronics represents the ultimate test of this strategy. In the 1970s, semiconductors and consumer electronics required the most advanced technology and the most sophisticated manufacturing processes in the world. Companies like Samsung were still primarily trading businesses, with no experience in high-tech manufacturing. But Park saw electronics as the key to South Korea's economic future. The government began pouring resources into electronics development. Tax incentives eliminated corporate taxes for electronics companies for 3 years, then cut them in half for the following 2 years. The state provided low-interest loans, built specialized industrial parks, and even sent Korean engineers to study in Silicon Valley and Japan. Samsung made the leap first. Lee Byung-chul, the company's founder, committed to electronics despite having no relevant experience. The decision seemed reckless. Samsung's first semiconductors were crude copies of foreign designs. Quality control was inconsistent, and international buyers remained skeptical of Korean technology. Park's system provided patient capital and protected markets necessary for Samsung to improve. The company reinvested profits into research and development, hired foreign experts, and gradually mastered increasingly sophisticated technologies. By the 1980s, Samsung semiconductors began competing directly with Japanese and American products. Hyundai followed a parallel path in automobiles and shipbuilding. Chung Ju-young transformed his construction company into a manufacturing empire by applying the same systematic approach Park used for the entire economy. When Hyundai decided to build cars, foreign experts declared the plan impossible. South Korea had no automotive industry, no supplier network, no skilled workers. Chung ignored the skeptics. In 1967, Hyundai opened its first automobile factory, initially building Ford models under license. Chung's real ambition was to design and manufacture completely Korean cars. In 1975, Hyundai launched the Pony, the first automobile designed entirely by Korean engineers. The early results were mixed. The Pony suffered from quality problems and lacked the refinement of Japanese competitors. But Park's protective trade policies gave Hyundai time to improve, while government financing enabled massive investments in research and development. Shipbuilding followed the same pattern. In 1974, Hyundai created a shipbuilding division despite having no experience in marine engineering. The company won its first major contract by underbidding established competitors by massive margins, gambling that Korean workers could learn shipbuilding technology while actually building ships. The gamble succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Hyundai Heavy Industries became the world's largest shipyard within 2 decades. Korean shipbuilders mastered increasingly sophisticated vessels, from simple cargo ships to advanced container vessels and oil tankers. The industry that foreign experts said would never succeed in South Korea now dominates global markets. These successes created a powerful momentum that transformed the entire Korean economy. As steel, electronics, automobiles, and shipbuilding industries matured, they created demand for thousands of supporting businesses. Machine tool manufacturers, chemical companies, and precision instrument makers all emerged to serve the growing industrial base. The chaebol system enabled this rapid diversification. Companies like Samsung and LG expanded from their original businesses into dozens of related industries. Samsung moved from trading to textiles, to electronics, to semiconductors, to smartphones. Hyundai grew from construction to automobiles, to shipbuilding, to steel, to heavy machinery. This diversification strategy allowed Korean companies to capture value at every stage of production, while spreading risks across multiple industries. When one sector faces difficulties, profits from other divisions sustain overall growth and investment. But Park's transformation demands enormous sacrifices from ordinary Koreans. Workers labor in dangerous factories for low wages, while the government suppresses labor unions that might demand better conditions. Environmental protection is virtually non-existent, as industrial development takes priority over all other considerations. Park justifies these hardships through a simple logic. South Korea faces an existential threat. Surrounded by hostile neighbors and dependent on foreign aid, the country must industrialize rapidly or risk permanent subjugation. Individual comfort must be sacrificed for national survival. The results validate Park's harsh calculations. Between 1962 and 1979, South Korea's gross domestic product grew by more than 8% annually. Per capita income rose from $87 to over $4,000. Exports increased from $87 million to over $15 billion. More importantly, South Korea develops the technological capabilities that will drive future growth. Korean engineers master semiconductor manufacturing, precision machinery, and advanced materials science. Korean companies build the research and development capabilities necessary to compete with established global leaders. By the late 1970s, the transformation Park envisioned begins to accelerate beyond even his ambitious projections. Korean products start winning market share not just through low prices, but through superior quality and innovative features. The foundation for South Korea's emergence as a global global technology leader is now firmly established. When Park Chung-hee is assassinated in 1979, he leaves behind a nation unrecognizable from the one he inherited 18 years earlier. The man who seized power in a country poorer than Bolivia created the foundation for what would become one of the world's most advanced economies. Today, South Korea stands as the world's 12th largest economy. Samsung alone generates revenue equal to 20% of the nation's entire gross domestic product. Korean companies dominate global markets in semiconductors, smartphones, shipbuilding, and steel production. The per capita income that once sat at $72 now exceeds $90,000, surpassing most developed nations. But Park's legacy remains deeply complicated. His authoritarian methods crushed political opposition and demanded enormous sacrifices from ordinary citizens. His development model worked for South Korea, but it required a level of state control and social discipline that many societies could never accept. The question Park's story poses is profound. Can a nation transform itself through sheer force of will and strategic planning? His answer was an emphatic yes. Through 18 years of relentless focus, systematic investment, and absolute commitment to long-term vision, he proved that even the most hopeless circumstances can be overcome. This is Park Chung-hee, the dictator who refused to accept his country's limitations and built a technological empire that changed the world.